The foreclosure notice on my kitchen table had grown roots. That's how it felt. Every time I walked past, the paper seemed heavier, the red ink of the final warning bleeding into the cheap particle wood. It was that weight that had me slumped at the rusty spur, nursing a beer that was mostly foam. The place smelled like generations of spilled booze and quiet desperation, which suited my mood just fine. That's when he walked in. He didn't belong. In a dive bar where the newest shirt looked 10 years old and faded from sun and sweat, he wore a tailored wool coat that probably cost more than my truck. Lean, with a sharp, bird-like intensity, his eyes scanned the shadowy room like he was sizing up livestock. They landed on me, and a flicker of recognition passed over his face. He walked right over, his expensive shoes silent on the dirty floor. "You're Harvey Wiggins," he said. It wasn't a question. I took a slow swallow of the weak beer. Depends on who's asking. My name is Alistair Finch. He sat down opposite me without asking, placing a thin leather briefcase on the sticky tabletop. I'm a collector, and I've been told you're the best tracker in this part of the state. I almost laughed, maybe 10 years ago. Now, I was the guy you hired to find a lost dog when you couldn't afford anyone else. My best days are behind me, Mr. Finch. These days I mostly wrangle tourists. He leaned forward and the air around him seemed to chill. I'm not interested in tourists. I'm interested in a hunt. I want you to guide me, and I want you to find something for me. He paused, staring straight through me. I want to find the pale-eyed stag. The name hung in the silence like smoke. Behind the bar, old Jed Hemlock, whose family founded this miserable town, stopped wiping a glass. The two old-timers frozen over their checkerboard in the corner. I felt a cold prickle of unease, not just on my neck. The pale-eyed stag was a ghost story, a fireside tale for spooking kids and drunk hikers. A death omen. That's a fairy tale, Mr. Finch, I said, trying to keep my voice flat. Local boogeyman. Is it? His eyes had a manic light, a dark fire that felt deeply wrong. Legends are born from truth, Mr. Wiggins. I believe it's out there, and I will pay you $50,000 to lead me to it. The number hit the table between us and sucked the air right out of the room. $50,000. That wasn't just enough to save the house. It was enough to fix the roof, pay off the rest, maybe even breathe easy again. The red ink on that kitchen table flashed bright in my mind. My pride, what little was left of it, fought against the sick knot of debt in my gut. Every instinct screamed. This guy's obsession was unnatural, and the silence from Jed and the others was a warning louder than any shout. But pride doesn't make the bank notice disappear. You're serious, I stated, deadpan. Deadly, he replied, and the word raised the hairs on my arms. He snapped open the briefcase. It was stuffed with cash, neat bricks of $100 bills. He pulled one out, a $5,000 deposit, and slid it across the sticky surface towards me. Half now, the rest when I have my prize. I looked at the money, then at Finch's sharp, predatory smile. I thought of the woods I knew better than the back of my own hand, of the skills I knew I still had. Whatever spooked the locals, it was just an animal. Maybe an old buck with clouded eyes. Something explainable. My skills were real. This money was real. I couldn't afford things being any other way. My hand reached out and drew the stack towards me. "When do we leave?" Finch's smile widened into something sharp. He didn't shake his hand. He just nodded slowly, like this was the only way things could ever have gone. As he stood to leave, my eyes flicked past him to Jed Hemlock behind the bar. The look on Jed's face wasn't suspicion anymore. It was pity. The kind you save for a man you know is walking straight onto a trap, a man you know you'll never see again. We left the rusty lights of Hemlock's Hollow behind, and Finch's truck chewed up the last of the gravel roads until there was nothing left but a wall of black trees. He killed the engine, and the silence that rushed in felt heavier than any sound. It was the kind of deep country quiet I was used to, but Jed Hemlock's pitying stare was burned into the back of my mind. It made the darkness feel predatory. Finch moved with a brisk, near-silent efficiency, grabbing his expensive pack and a rifle case that probably cost more than my truck. He didn't offer me a weapon, and I didn't ask. I had my hunting knife and my wits. They'd been enough for 42 years. We walked for 2 days, deeper and deeper into old-growth forest that had never seen a logger's saw. The canopy of ancient hemlocks and poplars was so thick it created a perpetual twilight on the forest floor, even at high noon. The air, thick with the smell of damp earth and 1,000 seasons of decay, seemed to swallow every sound. And that was the first thing that started to eat at me. The silence. It wasn't just quiet. It was a total absence. No squirrels chittering in the branches, no woodpeckers drilling into dead bark, not even the drone of a horsefly. My boots sinking into the mulchy soil, the rustle of Finch's nylon jacket, those were the only sounds in the entire world. On the first night, I tried to convince myself it was the season, or a change in weather patterns. By the second, that excuse had worn thin. I felt a constant prickling sensation on my neck, like I was being watched, but the woods remained empty. Still, lifeless. Finch didn't seem to notice. Or if he did, it only deepened his intense focus. He moved like a pilgrim approaching a holy site, eyes scanning every shadow, every moss-covered rock. We'd stop to make camp as twilight bled into true night, and the silence would somehow grow louder. During my watch the second night, a pocket of air turned suddenly, unnervingly cold. A sharp, biting chill clung to my clothes, nothing to do with the surrounding temperature, before vanishing as quick as it came. I told myself it was just a strange downdraft from the ridges. I was a professional, damn it. There was an explanation for everything. Late in the afternoon on the third day, Finch stopped dead. He raised a hand, knuckles white. He didn't point, just stared at the ground. "There," he whispered, the sound like a stone skipping across a frozen pond. I came up beside him, eyes following his gaze. And there they were. The tracks. My first thought, it's just a deer. A big one. The cleaves of the hoof were pressed deep into damp black soil near the creek bed. Bigger than any whitetail I'd ever tracked. Bigger even than an elk. I felt a quick, stupid surge of professional pride. I could track this. The $50,000 felt a little more real. Then I looked closer. The gait was wrong. I knelt, fingers hovering over the edge of a print. The stride was uneven, a long reach here, a short, stuttering step there. It wasn't a limping animal, no drag, no favoring of one side. Just irregular, messy. like the creature was still learning how to walk. My unease became a cold knot in my stomach. "It's here, Wiggins," Finch breathed, voice trembling with feverish awe. "Do you see? It's real." I didn't answer. My tracker's mind followed the trail, piecing together the impossible story written in the mud. Hoof, hoof, another hoof, but dug in at a strange angle. Then another. Then I saw it. My blood froze. Nestled between two perfect hoof prints was another mark, not a distortion or trick of the ground. It was the clear, unmistakable, and impossible print of a single, bare human foot. Long, slender, with the outline of 5 toes and a defined arch, part of the same trail, same cadence, one step a cloven hoof, the next a naked foot. I stared, mind refusing to understand. My whole life's work was knowing the woods, the logic of tooth, claw, and hoof. This was madness. This was a violation. Finch let out a low, shaky laugh. When I looked at him, it wasn't fear on his face, it was pure rapture, like a man who'd just seen God. "The legends, the old stories," he murmured, eyes glued to that wrongness in the earth. "They said it walked between worlds, that it was neither beast nor man." My hard-won pragmatism shattered like glass. This wasn't a folk tale. This wasn't a joke. Jed Hemlock's pitying face flashed in my mind, and I finally understood. He wasn't pitying a fool robbed of his money. He was pitying a dead man walking. The $50,000 felt like pocket change, a funeral fee. I stared at the impossible track, then into the darkening labyrinth of trees ahead. For the first time ever, I was terrified of the woods. My hand found the hilt of my knife, but deep in my bones I knew it wouldn't be enough. Finch didn't seem to notice the way my hand clamped onto the hilt of my knife or the tremor running through my arm. He was lost in a state of rapt discovery, his breath puffing out in white clouds that hung in the unnaturally cold air. We pushed forward, but I wasn't leading anymore. I was just pulled along by the force of his obsession, my own hard-earned know-how now useless. The trail of broken prints continued, a sickening stitchwork of hoof and foot laid across the forest floor. Every few yards, another one of those bare human foot impressions would appear, perfectly formed in the soft ground, a deliberate mockery of how any real creature would walk. It felt like the woods themselves were shifting around us. The familiar smell of pine and wet earth faded, replaced by something sterile and slightly metallic, like the air after lightning hits close by. Another hour slipped by in near silence, broken only by our footsteps and Finch's whispers. Then I felt it, not with my ears, but through the thick soles of my boots. A low, steady trembling, so deep down it was more a feeling inside my bones than a sound. It was a current running through the earth beneath us. Finch stopped, his head tilted. "Do you feel that?" he asked, his voice barely more than a breath. I could only manage a stiff nod. The trembling grew stronger, and with it came a cold that had nothing to do with the wind. It was a dead cold, a deep cellar cold, seeping towards us from the path up ahead. The thick wall of hemlocks and oaks in front of us abruptly ended like something sharp had cut straight through the forest. We pushed through the last hanging green branches and stumbled into a place that had no right to exist. It was a clearing, a perfect circle nearly 100 yards wide, but it was unlike any glade I'd ever seen. The ground was covered in a layer of fine gray powder like ground bone, muffling every step we made, and the trees, every single one, was dead. A silent grove of skeletal, bone-white trunks rose from the gray earth, their bark unnaturally smooth and pale, their twisted branches clawed at the dim twilight sky like skeletal fingers. Felt like a graveyard for trees. I forced my voice to work, though it came out in a dry croak. This isn't on any map. Finch paid me no mind. He drifted slowly toward the nearest pale trunk, his gloved hand stretching out, his fingers traced over the bark. "Look," he said. With great effort I made my legs move, my boots silent in the dust. Where a normal deer would have rubbed its antlers, tearing away bark in rough, messy streaks, there were spots where the bark had been peeled away with neat, perfect cuts. The wood underneath was stark white and smooth, the edges clean. It didn't look like any animal did this. It looked like someone had taken a scalpel to these trees and removed the bark with careful, terrible precision. The low hum was now loud enough to hear, the source of the trembling in my bones. It was a steady, droning sound coming from all directions at once, a sound that felt incredibly old and deeply wrong. The air was freezing, stealing my breath and making my bare skin prickle, and in the exact center of this dead grove, it stood waiting. Finch breathed out a shaky, adoring sigh. "There," he whispered. I followed his gaze, and my whole world seemed to shrink down to that single spot. It stood perfectly still, like a nightmare statue. The pale-eyed stag. Its coat was the color of ancient dried paper, blending perfectly into the gray dust and white trees. But it was the head that froze me. Its antlers were a crown of polished, pure white bone, branching into wicked points that caught the faint light. And its eyes. They were two blank, milky white stones. No pupils, no irises, nothing to suggest they could see. Just blank, dead things. Yet, from 100 feet away, my heart pounding against my ribs, I knew it was looking at me. That sense was absolutely terrifying. Those blank cataract eyes were boring right through me, pulling away every little piece inside my head. It saw the desperate fool who'd taken a deal with the devil for money. Every instinct screamed at me to run, the urge of physical pressure in my throat, but my legs were locked. All the money in the world meant nothing now. My home, my pride, my life, it was all gone the second I shook Finch's hand. I was trapped, caught in this sterile white tomb, and the ghost from the old campfire tales was staring straight into my soul. The deep hum that had vibrated up through my boots was gone. The silence it left behind was worse, a hollow, dead pressure pushing in on my ears. My whole body was a single, rigid muscle, frozen by those blank, milky eyes. It felt like an eternity passed in that single, stretched-out second. Beside me, Finch let out another breath, a sound caught between reverence and hunger. It wasn't me who broke the spell, but him. The tiny click of him flicking off his rifle's safety was sharp in the vast silence, hitting me like a physical blow. He began to lift the weapon, settling its stock hard against his shoulder with a slow, practiced move. "No," I tried to say. It came out as a strangled croak, dry air scraping. My throat had locked tight. "Finch, don't!" He didn't hear me, or he didn't care. His focus was absolute, his body coiled for murder. I saw his finger tighten until white on the trigger. My own mind shrieked, a high-pitched wail of pure animal panic. "This is wrong. This is all wrong. You don't shoot something like this." The rifle cracked. The sound wasn't soaked up by the trees. In the strange, dead quiet of the ashen grove, it was sharp and violent, a harsh noise that seemed to crack the air. For a moment, the stag didn't move. Then, it crumpled. It didn't fall like a normal deer, thrashing or taking a last shuddering breath. It just dropped, legs folding under it like its strings had been cut. It landed in the fine gray dust with a final soft thump, barely loud enough to reach us. The silence that crashed down next was suffocating. I stood there, my breathing harsh and loud in my ears, eyes locked on the pale shape lying still. "Got him," Finch whispered, voice thick with victory. "By God, Harvey, we got him." He lowered the rifle, a wild grin spreading across his face. "My prize. Secure it. Go on. Check it. Make sure it's dead." Every nerve in me screamed, "No." The thought of going near that thing turned my stomach. "Finch," I rasped, my voice still shredded. "Go," he commanded, triumph hardening into a cold order. "I'll cover you. Just move." My legs felt like lead, but I moved anyway, on autopilot. The 50,000, the bank taking my place, none of it mattered now. All that mattered was the man with the powerful rifle and the impossible thing lying dead ahead. I took a step, then another. The gray powder puffed around my boots with each careful stride. It felt like walking on cremated ashes. The air turned colder still, like the dead silence inside a meat locker. As I neared it, I kept my eyes on its motionless form, half expecting it to rise. I stopped 10 feet away. Nothing. It was just a heap of papery skin and bone. I nudged it timidly with my boot toe. A wave of nausea hit me. It wasn't soft like flesh. It had no give at all. It felt like kicking a sack of sticks wrapped in thin old leather. Finally, deep down professional instincts buried under the terror forced me to my knees. I had to know. I had to see what this really was. Finch demanded his proof, and I, God help me, needed to see the monster up close. I reached out a shaking hand and laid it on the thing's neck. The hide was cool, but not like something that had just died. It was cold like stone, and it was loose. Horribly, unnaturally loose, like an ill-fitting mask. I could feel the hard shapes underneath shift separately within the loose skin. No blood smell hit me, no copper scent of death, only the dry, sterile smell of dust and something else, ancient, like stone pulled from deep earth. My stare moved up to its head, the eyes, those milky white orbs. Up close, I saw it with terrifying clarity. They weren't eyes. They were perfectly round, perfectly smooth stones, polished dull and fitted into hollow sockets, no eyelids, no veins, no sign they'd ever been alive, just set stones. My heart hammered a frantic, sick rhythm against my ribs. I forced myself to look at the antlers, that magnificent bone-white crown. I touched one tine, sharp, honed to a deadly point. My fingers traced the shaft down towards the skull. My mind splintered then. The antlers didn't grow from the skull. They were welded onto it, yes, but their roots weren't in the head. They curved down, twisting obscenely, connecting directly to sharpened points jutting out from the thing's own ribcage, ribs bleached white and twisted into a nightmare version of a stag's crown. This wasn't a creature. This was a disguise, a lure, a carefully made puppet of bone, ill-fitting skin, and polished stones. A cold wave of terrible understanding crashed over me, so strong I thought I'd drown. My whole understanding of the world, of life and death, shattered. It was a lie, all of it. The hunt, the tracking, the prize. We weren't the hunters. We'd been led, drawn here, right to this exact spot, by this thing. My breath caught in a sob. I scrambled backwards, kicking up a cloud of gray dust, my mind reeling from the huge, terrifying truth. It was a trap. We were always in the trap. I jerked my head around to scream a warning at Finch. The words died as I saw him still standing at the grove's edge. He wasn't looking at me. His rifle hung loosely, slack in his grip. His face, flushed with triumph just seconds before, was blank with confusion. He was staring at the corpse, staring at the thing I'd just abandoned. And I knew, with a cold certainty deeper than any unnatural chill, that the real nightmare was about to start. My warning to Finch died in my throat, a choked, useless sound. My mind, which had been scrambling for grip while my sense of reality slipped away, finally let go. I remember the heavy silence after the rifle shot. But this new silence was different. It was heavier, expectant. From the stag's crumpled form came a noise, a soft, wet shifting, like meat settling on a butcher's block. Then another sound followed it, a low popping deep within its chest. It sounded like cartilage giving way under pressure. The stag's corpse convulsed, a single violent shudder that sent a puff of gray dust puffing up into the still air. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I could only watch as the creature began to push itself up. Its front legs, the ones that had buckled moments before, just like a normal deer, bent at an impossible angle. The joints reversed, turning backwards, the limbs stretching longer with a series of dull, muffled snaps coming from deep inside. They weren't legs anymore. They were arms, impossibly long and thin, jointed like an insect's. The hooves, those perfect cloven hooves we had tracked for days, split down the middle. They peeled back like the skin of a rotten fruit, revealing what was inside, 5 long, needle-thin fingers made of bone, glistening and yellow-white. The thing rose. It wasn't graceful. It was a dreadful, careful unfolding, as if putting itself together piece by horrible piece. The skin of the deer, the beautiful pale hide Finch had wanted so badly, hung from its bony, angular frame like a ragged, blood-soaked robe. It gained its feet, standing taller than any man, a gaunt, skeletal horror wearing a grotesque costume. Then, with a last wet, tearing sound, the stag's head and neck slumped forward, dangling from the body by only a thin flap of skin. From the hollow where the neck had been, a new head lifted. It was narrow and hairless, with nothing you could call a face except a smooth, pale surface where features should be. It was this blankness, this complete lack of anything human or animal, that was the most terrifying thing I had ever encountered. The creature shrugged, almost carelessly. The deer hide, its elaborate trick, slid from its sharp shoulders and fell to the ashen ground in a heap. The lie was over. The true hunter stood before us, and it wasn't looking at me. Its featureless head turned slowly and deliberately, fixing its attention directly on Alistair Finch. For the first time since we saw it rise, Finch moved. His rifle slipped from his suddenly weak grasp, clattering onto the dusty earth. His face, which was blank with shock just seconds before, was now a mask of pure, frozen fear. His mouth hung open, but nothing came out. He understood. He wasn't hunting a trophy. He had been answering a summons. He was the prize. That knowledge shattered the paralysis holding me. The last thin thread connecting me to the man, the money, to my whole old life, snapped. Nothing was left but the raw animal need to run. I stumbled backwards, my boots clumsy in the fine powder, kicking up clouds of it behind me. I turned, not daring to look back, and ran blindly away from the ashen grove. The last thing I heard wasn't a scream or a roar, but the soft, deliberate crunch of a single, silent step being taken toward the paralyzed collector.